Welcome to Fitzanne's Property Exchange, hosted by Scheltema, designed to keep you informed and captivated about the South African residential property market. Subscribe to our channel today and enjoy conversations with some of the most influential, innovative, and interesting industry experts, stakeholders, and scheme executives as they render input in today's property market.
Good morning. Once again, I'm Scheltema, the CEO of Fitzanne Estates, and we would like to welcome you to our property exchange. Yes, it is that time of the year, winter, we're cold, and then we have to sit without electricity. No Wi-Fi, we are cold, and we are fed up. So today I'm talking to Sheldon Friedericksen, who has graduated in dual honors in finance and accounting from UCT. Upon completion of his degree, Sheldon joined Deloitte for a 3-year internship program. At the end of his articles, he took a secondment to New York, working for the Deloitte office branch in the United States. When he returned to South Africa, Sheldon stayed at Deloitte as manager and within 2 years was promoted to senior manager. Sheldon joined Fedgroup in 2014 as the group financial manager. Following the group restructure in 2015, Sheldon was named Chief Financial Officer. He is responsible for the accounting and finance of the Fedgroup. Good morning, Sheldon. Welcome, and I hope you're going to shed some light and guide us to more affordable methods of going hybrid or off the grid. And you're going to explain the difference between these two terms.
Good morning, Paul. Thanks very much for having me. It will be, hopefully I can shed the light that your listeners are looking for.
Okay, as you know, we are in the property management sector. We specifically specialize in residential properties. So we are starting to get these calls from either sectional title owners to say, I am done with this. I would like to have solar panels installed. And there's certain legislation that has to be complied with. We're not talking about that. Let's start talking about the technical stuff. Why do people opt for solar power versus electricity?
So, Paul, I think there's a dual reason why they're looking at solar. One, there is this greater impetus for sustainable energy being used and to move away from, your more traditional sources of electricity, which in the past have always been coal and those type of power. And I guess that's now come to the fore with the change in pricing. So as there's been this demand for solar, the actual price and the cost of generating the power using these renewable energy sources has come down to a point where it makes it actually cost effective to do it. So it's no longer just this, I'm doing something good for the environment, I'm also doing something good for the environment, but actually can save money by installing the right system for your property.
Okay, so could you explain the difference between hybrid and off-the-grid setup?
Yes, so an off-the-grid setup means that your property, whether it's a house or commercial property, would not be connected to Eskom or the municipality's grid. So all your power needs are catered for that, well, you've generated them yourself in that distinct property. Now, in using kind of solar and in our environment, and knowing that to get completely off the grid, you're going to need to have a generator when the sun doesn't shine, or sufficient battery backup with the correct equipment to power your house, including your oven, etc., that you're never going to be able to tap into the municipality. Whereas a hybrid system is you're straddling the fence. So you're wanting to get quite a lot of your power from renewable energy sources, getting as far off the grid as possible, kind of benefiting from that cost reduction and getting your electricity from these renewable energy sources. However, you always have this backup. So you're paying your network charge, you're still connected to the grid. So let's just say your off-the-grid system isn't working, you can tap into the municipality. And that's...
Okay, so Eskom would be a backup sort of.
you can create your system to be more as a full backup. So that's where you really are straddling the fence. Whereas many hybrid systems, they're looking at consuming 50 to 60% of the energy needs from their renewable energy sources, and then 40% is still from Eskom. And often that is what happens in this solar energy space. You're using solar energy during the day, storing some of that power in your
battery,
kind of load shedding backups, and then when you go into the nighttime, obviously the sun isn't shining, and that's when you are using more of power from the grid or Eskom.
Okay, what are the benefits of each?
So it depends on each of the situation that you have. So to convert your current household completely off the grid can be difficult. The actual technical aspects of that and the electrical needs in terms of rewiring your house, etc., can be quite onerous. So often in a new build, a developer would really consider the needs of the development, and particularly in the commercial space, trying to get sufficient kVA and kind of grid power to your site has become quite hard as the new builds trying to get the licenses to get that done. So there, it makes it easier.
Sorry, can I interrupt you? You say they would battle to get the licenses. What do you mean by that?
So there's the municipalities, etc., have started not allowing certain demand or certain requirements for bulk land. So they will only provide you enough power for a certain number of units or a certain demand supply. And that's where the developers look at kind of hybrid systems and alternative source of power, so they can build the property to the specifications that they want to. And up front, they can design the system, and the electricians can install the system in accordance with that. When you're looking at so when you're trying to take your current house off the grid, it's just those technical aspects aren't always as easy to deliver. So they can be done, but it can be quite onerous. And that's where kind of the benefits of being a hybrid approach just allows you that backup plan, and that you can also phase in your installation of solar. So you can start with a smaller installation, and kind of that's cost effective for you right now. And then as you reap the benefits of the savings of that solar plant, you can basically enlarge the system to get yourself more and more off the grid. I think from maybe a more personal view, a hybrid approach does work because it allows that optionality, particularly on resale. So to your listeners in the residential property market, some clients may want grid power. And now if your property is completely off the grid, you're only appealing to a certain aspect of the market. Whereas at least a hybrid approach gives you that ability to resell to any buyer who's based on their needs and what they're looking for.
All right. I suppose with the demand, has cost for this type of installation decreased or increased?
So the cost has definitely decreased.
Decreased? That's good news.
Yes. So from the peak, you were looking at kind of your cost of install ranging between 16 Rand to 20 Rand per watt installed. And now those prices have come down, I think between 10 and 13 Rand per watt installed. And I think this is as technology takes place, as the technology enhancements takes place. Similar, if I had to relate it to like computers. Computer prices have remained relatively stable. I think the Rand depreciation has an impact in terms of our comparison to Rand, but a computer with 10 times the processing power of what the computer could buy 10 years ago costs relatively the same for what you're getting. And I think that's where in the solar space, you can now install a kilowatt peak site. So that's the sizing equivalent of the site. You can now install that site with 10 panels because those panels are far more efficient and effective for the same size of them. Would have been a site that you would have previously needed, 30 panels to install. And that's where when you're looking at kind of the benefit that you're reaping and the cost per install and some of those fixed costs, like the installation team is the same, etc., that's where your actual cost for the installation for what the power you can produce has actually come down.
Oh, okay. I suppose when you are sourced to do an investigation or to provide a solution or a quotation, there has to be an assessment of the scheme specifically. I know you currently specialize more in commercial buildings, but in sectional title that differs. You have the old or older high-rises, or you have loose-standing simplexes or duplexes, or you have combined blocks of 4 sections and a few of those in a specific scheme. What would that assessment entail?
So the assessment basically would be very similar to what you do in any type of building, whether it be a retail mall. And it comes down to understanding what is the irradiance levels, so what solar power could be produced by the rooftops that are available for solar to be installed on. And that supply curve or production curve of the solar plant, you would want to then analyze what the current electricity consumption of the property. So in a residential development or a sectional title development, you would want to understand and try and marry those two together. Now, where residential in the past has posed problems is that the demand for electricity often isn't during the peak times of when solar is produced, which is generally around the midday period, because people aren't at home. Now, with the rise of work from home, different energy needs in the properties, as well as the smart technologies, the IoT devices that can actually manage the electricity consumption when geysers switch on, when your pool pump runs. In a sectional title scheme, there are many electricity consumers that aren't actually related to individuals. And that's where those smart technologies coming together with the solar power, you can create the demand for electricity that meets the solar peak. And that is what's making solar installations even more beneficial to have in your household than they were in the past. So the main assessment there is understanding your current electricity consumption needs, and that is measured over generally a period. Also looking at your rates bills on how much are you spending on electricity, and then an assessment starting with Google Maps to do an initial feasibility where you can see the rooftops, to a more technical due diligence and assessment to get what this expected solar production would be from the solar site.
Are there any cost involved in doing the assessment? If body corporates or sectional title schemes just want to find out, is it possible, is it feasible, and what could we save at the end of the day, and request such an assessment, is there a cost involved in that?
So most solar providers do not charge for that assessment. So the initial base assessment, which is your feasibility, reading your rates bills, depending on what meters you have, they can download some data that gives them more accurate information, and understanding your energy needs in that complex. With doing an initial design using technology, they don't charge for that. As you start getting into the more technical aspects of that, which is post that first quotation proposal approval, then that's where you are committing to installation, and that's where I guess the costs are incurred, but it's around the installation of the actual site, the final kind of construction and the engineering sign-offs, etc.
All right. Once again, depending on how the scheme is developed, so for an investor that's renting out a property that would like to consider this, if it is in a high-rise building, one individual section cannot proceed with this. It will have to be the building as a whole considering this installation. Am I right?
So you are right in terms of kind of the voting rights and how kind of you would use this. However, in terms of how electricity is shared and split, that's where technology does enable that even a tenant who is wanting to do this, as long as they have the approval to do it, the billing can be done just for them. Even though the solar generally in those installations would provide electricity to the whole building, the benefit of that, because the cost of that installation was borne by this tenant, they get the full benefit of that solar installation. And that would be to a property manager using their utility management provider, such as TechSitter, etc. With IoT devices, they can match that the billing for that tenant is commensurate with the solar installation that they've installed. Obviously, it would be in the benefit of the whole complex or the whole building that everyone does agree to it, because the cost of energy produced from a solar plant is definitely less than the residential charge that you're currently paying to your municipality.
Okay, that brings me to the next question. How does solar energy compare when it comes to cost?
So if you are buying the electricity, so that is generally through like a power purchase agreement. So that's more a rental model. So in a complex or commercial building, the landlord rents out their rooftop to an energy company, such as ourselves, the Fedgroup Solar Fund. You rent your roof, so you as a body corporate would earn an income, and that rental so that's the income that you would receive. You would then buy the electricity from the solar fund, and the net of that would be the cost savings. And depending on the nature of your demand, those savings can be anywhere from 10% reduction to your salary costs, to your electricity costs, to 50% reduction.
Okay, so Fedgroup actually does these installations?
Yes. So we have our service providers. So basically, we have 3 engineering procurement companies that are on our panel that have gone through our due diligence, and they are the actual construction service providers. However, the actual offering is provided by Fedgroup, which offers a number of methods in which you can finance and install it on your roof. So that one I gave at the moment, the first example I gave was the least risk option is that Fedgroup actually owns the solar site, and we rent your roof and provide you with cheap electricity through that model. However, we are responsible for the functioning of the site, the maintenance, take all the risks associated with that site. The other funding model is where complex or building owners are looking to actually own the solar plant.
Yeah, that is just what I wanted to ask. If they want to take a different option of eventually owning this installation, what can Fedgroup offer them?
Yes, so that's where we offer, in essence, it's an installment sales agreement. We call it lease to own. So there would be monthly payments that you make that is paying down, similar to you doing a vehicle finance. You're paying a monthly amount down to kind of acquire the site. And that ranges from 3 years to 10-year period. And that's where your initial kind of payment amount often may be the same as the current electricity charge that you're paying. So you are switching out what you're currently paying your municipality for electricity, and you are paying the same amount to Fedgroup in terms of paying down the financing charge of acquiring the site. But then over time, and as you acquire that full site, you now are getting electricity technically for free because the site has been paid for, etc. And that's the opening up the doors. Obviously, in that model, you are taking that risk of the maintenance of the site, kind of keeping it up and running, and that's where you can contract operations and maintenance provider to make sure the site carries on running how you want it. But you are assuming that risk because you are becoming the owner.
Great.
Those are the different models. So the one you get a initial discount because from day one, the solar site producing, you are reducing your costs. Whereas in the other one, you are buying an asset that will in the future reduce your costs.
Of course.
So they're slightly different models.
All right. In this rent-to-own agreement, would there be a provision for the maintenance of the system until such time as full ownership or the term of the agreement has expired?
Yes. So we would want an earning provider, and that is just to protect the equal rights of both parties. So Fedgroup would want the site to produce what it's mandated to produce and what the performance was expected. as well as yourselves, or as the property owner would want it to produce. And that's where there is the O&M agreement with our IoT devices that measure and make sure that the site is performing where we expect it to. So we can do proactive management.
That's great. Sheldon, thank you so much. And ending off, Sheldon, tell us, where can my clients get hold of Fedgroup? Who should they contact? And what is the details of your website?
So Fedgroup is a financial services company, and we launched an innovative product 3 years ago called Impact Farming, with solar being one of the products that we offer that allows individuals that want to invest their money and capital into an individual solar panel through our platform. They can do that. If you want more information, you can go to www.fedgroup.co.za, and you can either contact us through our website, or you can send an email to info@fedgroup.co.za, and the respective teams within our environment will get back to you if you're looking for investments, or if you actually are looking for a quotation for a solar installation in your various building. That's where you can get the information.
Sheldon, thank you so much. So what you're actually telling us, there are lights at the end of the tunnel.
Yes, there is, and hopefully through various installations and other partners that we have, you don't have to worry about not having lights at all.
Awesome. Thank you once again. Ladies and gentlemen, we will talk again soon.
This was Fitzanne's Property Exchange, hosted by Scheltema. Not only do we keep you informed on the very latest in the property industry, we also empower by expanding your knowledge base. Make sure to visit www.fitzanne.co.za to find out more about sectional title scheme management, letting, sales and trustee training. Remember to subscribe to our channel and follow us on all our social platforms.